The Business Simplicity Podcast, where leaders share their most successful strategies and the failures that inspired them, so business owners and managers can avoid the suffering and reap the benefits. With your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to the Business Simplicity Podcast. I'm having a conversation with Diane Zandee, who is a sustainable CFO. She's a researcher at the Nyenrode Business University in the Netherlands. She teaches there as well. I happen to have an MBA from Nyenrode, so there's a point of pride there. If you're not familiar with it, that school has a castle on its grounds. And when I was coming over to see the school for the first time, there was a castle at the school. And so I simply had to go there and get the MBA there. So, and if you're watching, this episode will be published at the end of November. And if you're watching on the video, I have this mustache going on, and that is, part of November, where people either run or host events or grow out a mustache if they can, to raise awareness and also money for men's health, not only physical health, but also mental health. And the call to action there, I always say, is thinking about mental health of anyone, not only men. If you haven't spoken to someone for a while and you have an intuition that they might be having a hard time, give them a call. Go out and maybe have a coffee with them and just let them know that you care. I think that would be a beautiful thing to do. So this is the end of November for me, and it's the beginning of some sustainability discussion. So Diana, can you kick us off in the conversation with just sharing, what is it that you yourself do? What do you do?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Chris. What is what I do? I inspire people to do more sustainability stuff. So making a change in the world and caring about each other, as you mentioned, but also caring about the planet and our future generations. And it sounds very holistic or abstract, maybe. So what I do in my lectures and how I help companies in getting the first steps into a more sustainable and future-proof organization, I make it very specific. So how can you change your business model, or actually start small? But how can you get more, confidence in what it means and what it understands? And often it's very rewarding for people to do that, but they really don't know how to start. And how they often start is in my classrooms, where I teach about sustainability, circularity, often in a business context. So with my background as a CFO, as a financial, I relate to also the profit aspects of sustainability, but it's also about caring for the planet and having a broader view on what doing business is.
And I'm wondering, maybe people that haven't been close to the topics, but can you just talk us through a little bit about what does sustainability mean versus circularity? What's an SDG, an ESG, a CSR? Like, there's some acronyms and buzzwords flying around. But when we talk about sustainability and circularity specifically for you, what does that mean? How can you explain that very simply?
Yeah, I can imagine it's confusing. Yes, when I talk, because a lot of definitions are out there. When I talk about sustainability, it's a journey, and where companies often start is in reducing their carbon emissions. So reducing carbon emissions helps to stop climate change. So that's a good start, but it's also circularity. The other dimension I will explain later is about caring about the resources you use. So careful with the materials you put into your products, having a long lifetime, and having them recycled and reused again. So closing material loops, that's the circularity part. So reducing energy on the one hand side, and the other side is about reducing and making materials more renewable. and the energy part also using renewable energy, of course. And by doing both, we can reduce our carbon emission footprint. So every individual, but also companies, can reduce that. And that's how we stop climate change. And when we talk about the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals, we talk about 17 goals from the United Nations that concerns also social aspects. So it looks like that I'm talking mostly on environmental part, so the waste and the energy part. But social aspects, so like no poverty or education for everyone. View of the Sustainable Development Goals also are about caring about everyone in the world and having supply chains, because we influence them from our side of the world, having a fair loan, having a fair wage for them. So it's also about our responsibility, looking from this side of the world for the impact we have on other sides of the world as well. And when we talk about ESG, so environmental, social, and governance, it's mostly used in financial institutions, for example, or investors. They talk about the environment, the social part. That's what I also mentioned right away, and the governance part is how you include it into your business. So how you include it in decision making. So not only focusing on the profit side, but balancing the people, the planet, and the profit side by also caring about the planet and other people in the value chain or in the world as well.
Yeah, the SDGs. If people are, obviously you can just look up UN SDG, but Diana has written a ebook, and I'll put the link in there. And it's called, the 5 success factors of a circular business model. And she talks a bit about circular economy, but also the 17 SDGs are listed right in there. And maybe that's a segue to the sustainability sprint, because this episode is part of a series, what we're calling Sustainability Week, and Samuel and Pepine will have already been published by the time this is published, and then they were really the client organization with Destiny. Diana was kind enough and to come in and present as really an inspirational expert speaker, to sort of elevate the thinking and make it really sharp, which is always helpful for the group of people orienting on what is sustainability and where do we go with it. And the next episodes, of course, are with Jessica and Simon, Vim, and at the very end we did something fun, that we flipped the script and they actually interviewed me. And so this is all coming out. But the way that started was Jessica's company had used the Simplicity Scan for 2 of her companies. And we were, talking more and more about, the SDGs and sustainability. And one of her companies was really in that space. And so basically we took the Simplicity Scan, that simple business design model, and poured the SDGs over it to make it very simple, and converted it into the sustainability scan. And that's what the sprint is based on. So if you want to learn more about the content of that, listen to the next episodes. But I'd like to just jump in, Diana. You have presented at 2 sprints. I'm just, how do you experience that? Like how would you explain a sustainability sprint to a friend at a family member or a friend at a bar or something? How would you describe the sustainability sprint, and what impact did that have on you?
Yeah, I think it's very fascinating that within one company, so many different ideas are on the topic of sustainability. So where I enter a room, and that's in sprints, that's in classrooms, many people have different ideas about sustainability and how to implement that into your business. So I think it's very worthwhile to create that awareness and the same understanding, same language to start your journey with. And actually, that's how I see those sprints and those awareness sessions or interactive sessions where I come in and explain about the topic and explore together with them what it means for them. And what you often see is that people also think, well, why us? So why should we take that responsibility? And it's very good to have that conversation at the start of really building like a future-proof or a new organization, which is more future-proof, more oriented towards the sustainable development goals. Because when that is not discussed at first, then it will be a burden the whole journey. So a lot of people, so you want to have everyone involved in understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then comes the how and what, and also the what there. That's where the sustainability development goals can help. Because by choosing a few, so not all 17, but a few, then it helps to get some focus. You cannot solve all the problems of the world by yourself. So creating focus. So that's what we're doing in those sprints, creating the same understanding. Well, people are not convinced that they should take responsibility, then it helps them to get them involved. And from there on, kind of accelerate because you have everyone engaged in this process, and then you can really build.
And I guess I'd also just it's an invitation, and your own consulting organization, Koru Consulting, and that's koruconsulting.nl. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So if people are interested in getting Diana in to activate their organization, and when we run the sprints, of course, we love having her there as well. So there's a high chance that if you were to run a sprint with Cuba, there's a good chance that Diana would be a part of that as well. So and what I like about, maybe it's because a little bit more who I am. I'm an accounting trained technology executive, so I look at things a little bit different than maybe computer science or engineering trained managers. And you look at sustainability differently as well. And I think the way you call it is the business side of sustainability or sustainability within the business. Can you shine a light a little bit on that maybe different or more impactful way of looking at sustainability?
Yeah. I see a lot of struggles in organization by how to get money out of, because sustainability is more expensive, right? That's a question I often get when I teach, because, we only have limited budgets. We only have, we have structures, and we're used to those structures to base our decision making. For investors within organizations, financial institutions, we all created those systems and structures, but they're hindering the sustainability-oriented decisions. So you can have an ambition to be more sustainable, but you also be aware of how limiting those structures could be. And one of those elements, for example, is that you want to have cash as soon as possible. So cash is king. So your return on an investment should be, within 5 years or whatever. But creating a more sustainable business requires a lot of innovation upfront. And those innovations create a long-lasting, profitable business, but with a balanced profit side, also a balanced, or creating also value from the ecological or social side. But those elements are often not included in our decision-making system. So when you only look at one-dimensional financial figures and return on investments, for example, then it won't match the real sustainability innovations we aim for by building a real sustainable society or a circular economy. So those structures are very limiting, and I'm talking a lot in my research, also for Nyenrode Business University, with all kinds of insurance companies, banks, financial institutions, but also with accounting organizations, about how to deal with those structures which don't have those new elements yet, but we want to include them. So how can you calculate them? We cannot always calculate them because it's also about the residual value of materials in 20, 30 years. And it's very uncertain what the value will be. So we have to work on scenarios and all kinds of assumptions. And that's kind of scary also for those banks and accounting organizations relying on historical data. And it's more difficult to get a feeling on future data or scenarios. So it's a real new world for them as well. And I see that also in organizations searching for money to get those innovations financed. So it's a field which is very difficult to get some assurance for all those people searching for assurance. So you have to do it by inspiration and by reasoning why this is a good thing to do. And you can only calculate a few of those elements and putting the small pieces of the puzzle together, which is not a complete puzzle yet in our current system. So that's the business side of sustainability. It's a difficult field to create systems around because we don't have all the elements created and found out yet.
Well, I want to throw something out there, maybe controversial, but that I think now it is just a poor business decision to not start on the sustainable business journey for your organization, your operation, your business model. And the reason I say that is, well, two things. Every time I've been involved in a sustainability conversation with an organization, and that's not a huge time because this isn't really my field of expertise, but if you look at your business with some discipline and get some data on how your business is performing, you will always discover ways to improve it. And so having conversations about how your business operates from a sustainable perspective, you will discover so much more. So there's, for me, there's just a short-term imperative, and then there's longer-term reasons, like cost of capital. There will be penalties, for organizations that are borrowing, and from a pure just treasury perspective, that if you aren't able to prove and demonstrate, that you're taking steps in this way. So for me, it's I don't think it's no longer an option of whether you're going to get into this game as part, core part of your business. It's more how much are you going to suffer until you realize it's just a wise thing to do, and then how aggressive will you start? So, what do you think about that? I guess you wouldn't disagree with it, but what's your reaction when someone makes that statement?
Yeah, definitely. I recognize these ideas also from I finalized a new research project recently, and I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs working on circular economy. And in my view, so circular economy is really about your core business, changing your core business. Entrepreneurs taking the first steps or creating recycling options or stepping into something new without knowing the outcomes. That's really about entrepreneurship in my view. But in their view, it's also about, doing nothing is no option anymore. So just step into it and trust that it will contribute to a better world. And in the end, it will lead also to business. To more business, and actually that's sooner than they expected in their first steps toward that circular economy ecosystem.
Yeah, I would. I think it works both ways. That it'll contribute to a better space for humanity to live and a better business, and I also think it's a better business now, as well as social impact, positive social impact later. So it just goes. I'm going to throw something at you that we didn't pre-discuss it, but I'm confident you can talk about it. And what I'm looking for is a few triggers or ideas. And for a listener who's in an organization who's maybe already doing some things around sustainability or circularity and where to go next. But one of the things that you present that I think was really powerful, and I'm gonna butcher the name around it and stuff, but sort of the mountain of circularity, I think is what you called.
Yeah, it's the value hill model. Yeah.
And as you, and for me, it's a dialogue thinking tool that when you go up, product or service design going up to when this is deployed and given to the market and it's consumed and maybe it comes back, and then as you're going down the other side, can you walk us through that and maybe that that is the message for this conversation of these are things to consider when you're sort of looking at your business from a circularity perspective. Can you walk us through that and see if we can trigger people to think about their business a little differently?
Yeah. When we look at the current linear economy, we build up value. So we extract materials from nature and manufacture products, assemble them, go into retail shops, selling them to the end end user. And the end user is on the top of this value hill model. So that's the user is where we create all those products for. But most products only are being used once or twice or only a few times, and then being thrown away, losing all their value and going into landfill. And then you lose value, you lose your materials, and you have to extract new resources from nature to create your new products. And we do that for around 91% of all materials. So we only reuse 9% of our materials globally. So by creating a circular economy, we're caring about the resources we use, but by skipping some steps in that value hill model, we also skip some transportation aspects, so reducing carbon emissions as well. So by creating a circular economy, we build up that value again, hopefully skipping the first one by having recycled resources engaged in our products, and otherwise really rethinking design of our products by creating more modular products, repairable products, and long-lasting products by using high-quality materials. And from creating those additional steps, which also cost some extra money, to invest in, to innovate, to think over your design, but you create a longer life cycle of your product. So creating that value for the user on top of that hill, and that user can reuse and reuse the product again, and maybe not only himself, but the second user after him or her, or by using sharing platforms like scooters or cars or whatever, intensify the user phase as well, lengthen the life cycle, and when something's broke, repair it again. When something is really damaged or some modules are broke, then refurbish it again. And from there on, you bring it back to the retail side of the value hill, so on the other side of the hill, and creating loops and also more complexity, because in the current economy, well, you simply hand over the box from left to right, the second partner in the value chain. But in this case, well, you can get recycled materials, you can get modules that has to be assembled again. So you create all new connections, and that's what creating a new circular ecosystem means, creating those closed loops where you can recycle materials and products again and again. That's what the ideal situation is in my view, creating a circular economy and therefore also reducing a lot of carbon emissions and not having to use new materials from nature, and therefore nature can be restored easily again. Well, maybe not easily. But in theory it works. What really a challenge is for companies is by creating all those new connections, because it's also rethinking your position in the value chain. What's the value you want to add to such an ecosystem, and what role can you play? And kind of every person in a current value chain can step up and say, I have a really good idea, I'm doing things differently, and find a launching customer or find another partner in that value chain, and find out together how you can restructure that process, that product, and maybe you can intensify that user phase. Or so making one step into that direction helps to reduce your own risks, because you know what to do, you understand what your partners are. So it's really creating experience in practice by knowing what to do as a next step.
And if someone's really triggered by what you're saying, and they're like, yeah, we need to rethink some of this, and maybe they've already started, and they want to accelerate, or they're just at the beginning. What's a great first thing to do? Like if someone's done with this episode, and if they've got an hour to spend on something, like to get something moving, a small step, what could a business person do to start a movement?
Yeah, it's really also knowing what the alternatives are already in your sector, in your field. So understanding why and what is already been done, and what you can learn from that by doing that yourself. It's going to also be from other sectors. So reusing materials when it's not done in your sector already, then you can learn from other sectors how they did it. It's always about collaboration, because no one can redesign his whole value chain all by himself. So it's also about searching partners. So that could be the other one, calling out for a couple of people, sharing some ideas, and getting into action together within that value chain.
Yeah, nice. Maybe it's just in your own organization, or maybe it's in your industry. Just hopefully you're not having to fly around too much to do it, but just get people, for a couple hours around a table and talk about it. Say, hey, what are we doing? Do some knowledge sharing. So love it. So Diane Zandee, the sustainable CFO, a researcher, teacher from Nyenrode. If you want to find her, you can find her at Koru Consulting. That's KORU consulting.nl. I'll also put the link to her ebook, the 5 Success Factors, and also her LinkedIn. So if you would like to find Diana, there's lots of ways. Just follow the links wherever you're watching this. And also I'll put information there from Cuba about the sustainability sprint, where we are delighted to have Diana as a guest speaker to inspire those groups as well. So Diana, thank you so much for joining. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Grace.
Thank you for listening. Download the Simplicity Toolkit from Ebullient.com to discover the power of the Simplicity Scan and Sprint. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player.